Do it again.
Welcome to Folie, Do, the podcast where we rate and rant all things spooky. But really, it's just movies. It's still
only
just movies.
Yeah, we're still only on movies.
And that's okay. That's all right. So this week, we spun the old spooky spinner. And what's the movie that we got for this week?
It landed on The Conjuring.
The Conjuring. What are your initial thoughts after watching The Conjuring?
I like the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen it lots of times.
Yes, I have too.
I think the acting is okay. For the family's acting, I like the family's acting.
Mm-hmm.
Other people, not so much. There are a number of things that I really like about it. And then there's some things that just don't hold up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of cheesy moments, and it doesn't really flow well.
I've watched this movie a lot, which I think part of that is a good thing, that I'm able to rewatchability.
Rewatchability is there.
But there's also things like, I mean, obviously, when we're watching movies now, we're a little bit more focused on things that we like and don't like. And there's things in this movie that just like keep picking away at me that just kind of bother me.
Mm-hmm.
The acting, I'd say, is predominantly good, but I'd still say that, like you said, there's certain people or characters within it that I'm like,
there are key characters that the acting style I don't like.
Yeah. And then there's just like weird, it feels like there's weird within like the story with some of the characters together too, like the dynamic. And we brought up the skeptic with the believer picking and prodding at each other, and then there's like weird scenes where for some reason there's like tension. They try to build tension between the two, and you're like, what was that?
They try to build tension and form relationships that I just don't think they don't give a lot to the movie itself. I don't think they're that important.
It's like they were really trying to focus on some of that, and then they kind of just let it go.
It didn't stand out, except for the fact that it annoys me every time I rewatch it.
Well, there's things like, exactly. Well, I mean, there's things like that, and then there's other just kind of like, even just like surface level, how things look. Some aesthetics are just kind of cheap, and it kind of takes me away. One thing that I put too was the house, and you had brought that up too, that the house just seemed, it was interesting. It was interesting how they were able to fill out this whole house. Yeah,
there are things just off about certain elements. They're moving from what we assume is a smaller place in New Jersey to a place that they got really cheap. You have a big house, you have a lot of land. But something that I noted, and maybe it's just because we have recently moved into a bigger space ourselves, is that they have so much shit that every single room is basically put together as soon as they move in. They don't have a lot of money, so I wouldn't assume that they're buying a lot. And besides the basement, I don't think any furniture was left in the house. The walls look like they're painted to look old and rotting. Yep. It looks like how you would see a haunted house during Halloween.
Exactly. It looks like a set piece. Yep. And that's kind of a note that I had. But before we get into everything, let's just give some of the background first, and then I'll let you dive into the movie that we watched. Yeah. So Conjuring was made in 2013. The director is James Wan, the infamous James Wan, who directed the one and only, who directed Saw, Insidious 1 and 2, and then Aquaman.
Oh, hello. What the hell?
And I guess
we were just talking about Aquaman.
But apparently, as of this recording, he's also supposedly doing Aquaman 2, which I guess hasn't been confirmed yet. But yeah, he's like, you know what? I dominated the horror genre. Let me move on to the next greater stink up DC. Is that what you're saying?
Well, DC's already stinky.
Yeah, it's pretty rank. So the cast is I wouldn't say very like star-studded necessarily, but you've got Patrick Wilson, who's been in literally Insidious movies.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of the...
Which has confused me over the time, is like, when these movies came out, they came out around the same time as each other. And I keep confusing the two movies, Insidious and Conjuring, together because of that fact. And it bothers me. But whatever, I'm a grown adult. You've got Patrick Wilson playing Ed Warren. You have Vera Farmiga. I don't know how to say her last name. Never said her last name. She was playing Lorraine. You've got Lily Taylor playing Carolyn, and Ron Livingston playing Roger. So I mean, that's the. I don't want to go through all of the.
Those are the main characters. Yeah, those are kind of the main characters.
So the top billing.
Yeah, the big characters.
So Jessica, give us the plot of this movie.
Okay, so opening scenes are. We come in on this conversation with these three, I would say like mid-20-year-olds, and they're talking to Ed and Lorraine about a doll that they think is possessed by a spirit of a little girl who used to live there. And then all of a sudden, all these crazy things happen. And Ed and Lorraine tell them that, well, this is actually a demon. You've invited a demon to live in your house. And this whole part I take issue with because, like we said, there are a lot of things in the movie that they make to look super creepy, yes. But it's so contrived, it's so obvious, and Annabelle is one of them.
Yep.
Who the fuck would have that doll in your
You can't picture anyone picking that up and just holding it and go,
No, you know, my brother, so when my mom had like her little antique shop for a while, yeah. She brought back this little creepy doll. And my brother and I used to play this game where we'd hide it in each other's rooms, and whoever found it would have to hide it again. And it was so great. And it wasn't even a tenth
of what Annabelle
was. It was just like a normal doll, but it was just old. And we're like, ooh. Annabelle looks like the devil shat her out.
And after that went, ooh.
Yeah. And then the devil's dog started to eat it.
Started chewing on it?
Yeah, and then vomited. Yeah, but so even if it was like a family heirloom or whatever, there's no fucking way I would have a doll like that. And then if it started to move, I wouldn't invite a spirit to live there. Even if it was, and you know what, I'm not a huge fan of little kids, so maybe I'm the wrong person to have a take on this, but whatever. Either way, stupid. It looks too terrifying. There's a crack in her fucking eye that they zoom in on.
Yeah. They go, ooh.
Yeah. Ooh, how cute.
That's one of the bigger, like, not bigger, but it's one of the things too that I just like.
I take issue with
in this movie, like them putting just Annabelle specifically in this movie, because you know that they're using it as a launching point to have another movie based on Annabelle the doll, which I can't remember specifically. I think I've only seen it once prior, and I know that it's like part of the series of the Conjuring movies, and maybe it's not a direct sequel or prequel to it, but it's like a sub movie.
That doesn't really bother me that much because hey, it's more movies for us to watch. But
great.
But yeah, I just the look of it was.
It's like, why would anyone have that doll?
There's no realistic element to that at all, and I think part of the reason that people really like The Conjuring in the first place is because it was based on a true story. Right.
And I was telling you that too. Like, I showed you the picture of what the Annabelle doll.
It's a Raggedy Ann doll.
It's literally Raggedy Ann doll. But of course, when you see this version of the doll, you're like, oh, it's been modernized. Yeah. They made it. This is like spooky movie Annabelle. And they're like, yeah, oh, well, that's not that scary. Let's bump it up a little bit. And then you have what they have.
Let's take it up
like,
to
Jesus.
an 11.
I would still find the Raggedy Ann doll scarier than, I mean, obviously, like, that's the one that they show there is like, yeah, okay. But I'm like, come on,
if they would have stuck closer to what the original look was, I would have appreciated, I would have liked that a lot more.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then you see Ed and Lorraine are basically, this conversation was taped and they're showing this at a lecture that they had, and it kind of explains that Ed and Lorraine are these world-renowned demonologists who have helped assisting in exorcisms and cleansings and all this stuff. And then it also says that they experienced one exorcism that was so intense that they never shared this story until now.
My God.
And then we have, the title and everything. So
so that was the
transition. Yeah, it was almost, so it was like that whole explanation of Ed and Lorraine was all like typed out, and then it kind of scrolls down to the title, and then it scrolls down into the next scene that we're taken into. And that transition I thought it was
really cool.
I and like you pointed out, it did seem very 70s, 80s style.
It's funny because like and it might just be because we had watched The Exorcist recently, but it reminded me of The Exorcist. Even like the title crawl and everything too. Yep. There's elements of The Exorcist in this movie, which is very interesting to see.
Yeah. So then the next scene we're taken to is this old house, and you see this car and this moving truck pull up, and this is where we have the Perrin family roll up, and it's the mother, Carolyn, the father, Roger, and 5 girls ranging from, like, you'd guess, like 16 to spectrum. 6. Yeah. So they're moving in, and nothing really creepy happens, but you do see one of the little girls who's out. It's kind of this, like, country plot, and they're out by this lake, and she's by the lake, and she has this little music box that is, it's very Saw inspired.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I guess I didn't realize it was the same director, but that makes sense now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this little music box that looks like a kind of carnival tent or circus tent, so the red and white stripes.
It's got a little mirror.
Yep, it opens up to a mirror, and this is like where you have that kind of Saw spiral.
Yep. And you also pointed out to the painting on it too.
The painting looks so
annoying.
Terrible. There is an application that you can buy to paint that will make it have that streaky old antique look. It was like very big for a while. People love to do that shit. And
it looked like they took like sandpaper and just kind of like roughed the edges around a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like how people would like shabby chic a dresser.
Yeah.
It was just,
you say that like it's an ugly thing to do.
It's a very contrived look. It's very obviously made spooky. Yeah. And
it's gross.
It is. It's just, I hate it. But anyway, so she's playing with it. They go inside. Everyone kind of settles in, and the girls are playing their clap game, like hide and clap, I think is what they call it, which comes up later in the movie. And if anyone has seen the trailer, you know a few spooky scenes that happen that are related to that game. But and they have a dog, Sadie, that looks super cute. Won't come in the house because dogs are smart.
Yep.
Sometimes. Some dogs. Not my dog. But so she's barking. She won't come in the house. Everyone kind of goes to bed. The parents both say like, "Oh, we should christen the house," which I do
the
like
dynamic between the two.
I do like the dynamic between the two, the relationship. I like both those actors.
But within that, they're also just like looking at the dog, being like, "Oh, it's
yeah." Well, they're looking
there.
at the dog's still outside. It's barking at the house. It's kind of like tied up to the house. It's not gonna run away. But
to me too, though, I'd be like, if my dog's never done this before, this is weird. Why is the dog being so weird?
Oh, I've had a moment like that in our old house. We had a playhouse in the back of our yard, and my parents at the time, they were out doing something or gone for the night, and I was watching their 3 dogs and kind of just house sitting for the night. And during the day, I let out the dogs, and they just went outside. They usually run around, blah blah blah. They all like went over around the area of the playhouse and were like barking, and I thought, oh, that's really weird. Whatever. Let them back in later on in the night when it's dark. I let them out again, and they're all sitting at this point. They're sitting at the edge of the porch that we had, because that's where the light extended to, pretty much all facing the playhouse.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I was like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm not going near that. Everyone come inside. I'm turning on the alarm, and my phone is set to dial 911 as soon as I press the green button.
You didn't go, hello?
I wasn't
Who's out there?
If you're out there, I am going to call the cops after I walk through this alone.
This isn't funny.
Guys, Mom, Dad, I don't like pranks.
Okay, well, I'm going to take a shower.
But I've been in situations like that. No fucking way.
You take note of things like that, especially when it's your dog. But maybe that's just because
we watched too many spooky movies and we've
probably, but I don't know. It's just it's just like a weird trope. To me.
So anyways, the family all goes to bed. The next morning, the mom wakes up. She is checking on all of the girls, and one of the girls mentions like, "Hey, it's really cold. Can you turn up the furnace?" And then the mom also notices she has this big bruise on her leg. And so she ends up going downstairs to this boarded up basement at a time that they kind of, as they were playing their game the night before, they kind of crashed into the boards and they found this basement. Super spooky, spider webs everywhere. The lights, of course, don't work. But anyway, so the mom goes downstairs because she sees the door leading down to the basement is open. Her husband's down there. He's fixing the light and also trying to fix the furnace. Mm-hmm. So, like, the mom notices that all of the clocks have stopped at 3:07, which is another spooky thing.
Ooh. I wonder what it means.
A power outage for
batteries.
They don't run on batteries. It's wind-up clocks.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, so this is kind of the very immediate introduction to all of the spooky shit that happens.
Oh, I mean, they're immediate, but they're still slow. Like, it's not. It had, to me, it felt like it had the typical, like, scary movie. We gotta slowly build it. We gotta build it and build it and build it, and then it's gonna take off.
So the next thing that happens, the youngest little girl comes running down and asks the mom where the dog is. She wants to go see the dog, and the mom tells her, Sadie's outside. Go check on her. She's probably hungry. So the girl's running around the house. And then all of a sudden we hear her scream. And the mom and dad run out to find her. And this is where we see one of the worst scenes. Is that poor Sadie is dead. She's dead. So, giant red flag right there. There's no way I would stay in that house.
Did they say how the dog died?
No, they don't say how the dog died. You just see the dog on the ground, and it's not even a zoomed in shot or anything like that. So we don't get any details on how the dog died.
I had a note that it said "Cue dead dog." It's unfortunate because I feel like a lot of horror movies just use the dog as like a sacrifice as part of the build up to what's to come. They're just like, hey, dog died. What? Yeah, dog died.
Dog died.
Dog died. Day 2, dog dies.
Dog dies. The dog dies of summer.
You are on fire.
No. We are then taken, I believe, to Ed and Lorraine in the next scene. I believe they're showing around a reporter in their room of all of their haunted, possessed, spooky shit that they have 10 locks on the door.
So it's a museum.
Oh.
So the Warrens really did have a museum of haunted artifacts. After starting their research in the early 50s, they were able to collect over 30 years of artifacts. It's home to a coffin owned by a modern vampire.
What is a modern vampire?
Bleh.
An energy vampire?
Yeah.
Colin Robinson? An organ that plays itself. And a mirror that is said to summon spirits. They had a local priest come by once a month to bless everything on display. What do you know? I would love to go in there. Because I don't believe in that shit.
I've seen a lot of videos and stuff where people take cameras and stuff and go around. But they are, when he says don't touch, they had said the same. I'm pretty sure Lorraine is not alive anymore. I'm pretty sure she passed away. But that was one of the bigger things. It's just don't touch anything. You can walk through, but you can't touch.
You sniff them.
I hope. She's like, please don't touch. And then you go. She's like, oh, well, I guess you could do that.
You didn't break the rule. But yeah, so this is where we get to see where Annabelle was placed too. We find out where that Ed and Lorraine have a little girl that they're very protective of. And then we're taken back to the family. More shit is happening. I think she's waking up with more bruises. The house every single morning gets super cold. There's rotting smells going throughout the house during the night. One of the girls, while she's sleeping in the middle of the night and she shares a room with her sister, you see her leg get pulled. And it's pretty small at first to the point where she kind of wakes up. She's still almost half asleep and yells at her sister. Then the girls are going off to school. The dad is a truck driver, so he's gone for portions of the storyline. So it's really just the mom and then the youngest daughter during the day. The youngest daughter is showing her little music box, telling her oh, this is where I see my friend Rory. Rory's really sad all the time.
Smiling and happy about it.
And then the little girl wants to play hide and clap. And this is one of the spooky scenes from the trailer, I believe, where the mom is the one who's blindfolded, and the little girl has, she can give the mom 3 claps for the mom to find her.
It's the clapping game.
Hide and clap.
Mm-hmm.
So the mom's trying to find her, and she goes into one of the rooms after getting some hints, and there's this big giant armoire, and you see the mom, and she's on one end of the room with the armoire in the back, and the door is open, and then the mom asks for her last clue for the girl to clap again, and out of the clothes hanging in the armoire, you see these adult grayish hands that just go...
Very loose.
Very loose.
What I do appreciate about that part, too, is that they don't, like, zoom in or change the shot. It's like some of these shots are consistent and long. Some zoom into, like we were talking about how just because, I mean, this is the 70s, but like even the camera style in which they shoot things is very much like the 70s. Some shots are really long and they zoom all the way in. And then there's a shot like that where you have her clapping, but it's way in the background.
Yeah, it doesn't need
just
to
enough
cut,
for you to see.
Yeah, it doesn't need to cut to the armoire.
The zooming into the hand, seeing how dirty they are or something, or translucent.
Well, I really like that in scary movies where they don't need to show the demon or the devil, and they don't need to zoom in on everything. Like, I like that background scare.
Which, unfortunately, I think they do break that rule within the same movie.
They absolutely break. They're not consistent with it, but there are certain shots that they do well.
And those are the ones that are the most memorable.
I love those ones, yeah. So, anyways, of course, you find out the little girl wasn't the one clapping. She was in a completely different room. Yep. And then, again, we're taken to kind of nighttime where the mom is folding clothes and she hears giggles and more clapping. And she checks on the girls because she thinks that it's one of the girls. They're all sleeping. Then she goes kind of to the staircase to look down because she hears someone running downstairs. And they have this big wall of family portraits, and they all come crashing down, which, why that wouldn't wake up the entire house, because they're all framed in glass, too. So everything shatters. There's probably, 10 to 15 photos up there?
It's so loud. Even just for us watching it, it's loud.
Yeah.
And I was going to bring that up, too. I'm glad you brought that up. Because, and then, like... Not only that, like there's inconsistencies in which things happen.
The noises.
Noises. There's a time where it's probably a little bit later, but where she's locked behind doors, then all of a sudden it's just silent, and they're going with this whole like
scenes where people are screaming, and sometimes you can hear them really well in the next room, and then there's other times where all of these pictures crash and none of the girls wake up. And someone could argue that that's just the possession of the house that's fucking with people, but that seems like an easy out to me.
Well, like another part too was Nancy and her sister Christine. It was another scene in which something was happening in their room, and she saw something behind the door, and then the door like slowly was closing.
Well, so there's a scene that comes up where it's the 2 girls in the same room. The girl who got pulled by her feet a few scenes ago is pulled again to the point where she completely wakes up. She realizes it's not her sister that's sleeping right next to her. It was something else. And then she ends up, and this is actually, again, a scene that I like, part of it, where she stares because she's staring at her bedroom door that's kind of creaked basically to the halfway point of being open or being closed, depending on your perspective. And it's pitch black in between kind of the corner of the room and where the door is. And her face is completely petrified, and she's just like crying. She's scared. She's very scared. And she wakes up her other sister and says, "You see if there's someone there?" It's like, so she's really freaked out. And as a viewer, you just see darkness. It's just shadows and everything like that. So I really like that they didn't kind of...
And there really isn't anything there.
No, there's nothing there. They didn't even just like flash something on the screen.
Right.
And then the other sister wakes up. She goes to show her like, there's nothing here. And then the door slams shut. And this is when we hear the girls screaming. The parents wake up, run to their room. And it's just the one girl.
Which I think it's Nancy.
It's Christine who was the one who was being pulled, who saw the thing. Nancy is her sister in the same room. And the door slams and you hear, like, it sounds like both girls are screaming. By the time the parents open and get into the room, it's just Christine screaming and crying. And she says that this person told her your entire family's going to die.
But, like, Nancy is not freaked out at all.
Nancy's not freaked out at all.
She's more so like, you can see that she's concerned. She's like, what is happening?
She's concerned for Christine, that Christine's so scared.
But the door just closed right next to her too, and then
the door slammed shut. Where if it was me, I would totally be freaked out, especially if I woke up to my sister saying that there's someone in that space. Like, you go in there, oh, nothing's here, and then something really freaky happens. That would creep me out. She was fine. I would be on edge. Yeah, but she was just fine. She was like, oh, what is Christine crying?
Hopefully nothing happens to me.
And my beautiful hair.
She keeps coming in.
Things keep on happening like this. There's another kind of nighttime scene. The dad he was out on a drive, or like the dad was out working. And so again, the mom is just alone with the kids. She hears some more noises that are leading into basement, and so she goes down, and this is where she kind of calls down because I don't think the light's working again. I think it like busted or something crazy.
It's the 70s, nothing works,
especially the clocks. But so she yells down there and she's like, hey, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna call the cops right now, you better get out of there. And then as soon as she turns to go into kind of the hallway, the door to the basement knocks her flat in the face. It slams shut, knocks her back, because she kind of bounces like a ball down the
It's
stairs.
The ball that she threw to Roger earlier in the movie, and they're like, you like throwing my ball?
Well, catch these balls, baby. So she completely gets knocked down the stairs. Then all of a sudden she is kind of staring into all of this junk that's down there, old furniture, everything like that, and a ball gets thrown from the other side of all of this antique shit. Mm-hmm. So, of course, she's freaked out. She scrambles up the stairs. There's a few matches that were left up there that she tries to light, and she's at the top of the stairs, just like holding the matches, holding on for dear life. And then all of a sudden, because it's like pitch black behind her, all of a sudden we see these little hands come up right by her head and do again.
It's the one scene that I remember the most out of.
It's creepy. It is, it's definitely creepy.
I'm pretty sure they use that for the trailer as well. It's either that or one, but I remember that one the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so then she's screaming.
Banging on the door, which she can't open anymore. She's banging
on the door, screaming. We are shown a shot outside of the door in the hallway, and you can see the door rattling. You can hear her screaming. None of the girls wake up.
But I think it's interesting to note. You see it. That transition and panning away, but then her screaming gets muffled and then becomes more silent the closer we get to the stairs. Which, it's spooky and scary, but it's also like, what's happening right there? Is it like the ghost being like, no, keep her quiet, and then
inside
while I go
voices.
to the other, up.
And then upstairs in one of the girls' rooms, the oldest one of her younger sisters is a sleepwalker, and she comes walking into her room and starts walking into the wardrobe and just kind of banging it. And
which is something they'd been showing.
Yeah, this was, they kind of built up to this, like, oh, she's a sleepwalker. This is what she does. She keeps coming into this room. So the older sister gets up, kind of leads her to the bed and is like, okay, just sleep with me tonight, go back to bed. And then they both kind of are fully awake and see this creepy woman. And unfortunately, I don't really love her makeup. It's creepy, but I think, again, they overdo it. Just like the little music box and the walls of the house. It's overdone, I think, for me. But she's crouched.
Don't get me wrong. Like, if she's standing right over there in that door frame, I'm going to freak out, but...
Well, they could have... I feel like
again, anything could be standing in that door from right now, and I'm going to freak out. To be fair,
But I think in this scene, they could have hidden her face a little bit more with her hair and made those features a little bit distorted with that covering of the hair. And that would have been creepy for me, even because, again, she's, like, crouched on top of the dresser, which I think that's always a creepy pose when you have someone crouching down in kind of a distorted pose.
I have an interesting fact about that specific character of this movie.
Let's hear it.
Do we want to hear it now or when we know who it is?
Okay, let's wait. So it's this woman. She looks really ragged. She's crouched down, and then she jumps onto one of the girls and goes face to face with her. And then we're taken out of the room.
She screams in her face and goes, "Ah!"
Oh.
Ooh.
That's exactly what she does.
Oh, it's scary.
So we're taken out of the house. We see Roger. He's just coming back from work, and he hears a bunch of screams, runs inside, finds his wife, who has been banging on the door, runs upstairs to the girl's bedroom, and finds one of the daughters on the floor with nothing on her. So this is
She's clearly crazy.
Well, they're all crazy. There's a house full of women.
Where's the man of the house?
So now we've kind of reached the boiling point for the family. Yeah. We're taken back to Ed and Lorraine. They're doing some kind of lecture. And this scene is actually interesting because the real Lorraine Warren is in the audience of this lecture. And they don't like zoom in on her or anything like that.
She gets a good cameo.
She gets a good cameo, where if you know what you're looking for, you will clearly see her.
Yep.
But
if you don't, she's just an old lady. There's a lot of older people in that audience too. So
too thin of eyebrows.
It's just so scared.
I'm so scared. Carolyn, the mom, she's sitting in the audience as well. We get a little bit more information on Ed and Lorraine and some exorcism that they've done, which is actually a real case that there's some information of. They say it's one of the first documented exorcisms. We looked it up. Actually, we paused the movie and looked up just kind of a YouTube video.
Because I felt like I knew it already. I just couldn't remember. Like, it was specifically on this man named Maurice. And they used Maurice's name, I'm pretty sure, in the movie as well. And that made me think, I'm pretty sure I know who they're talking about.
They used a lot of that case information in the movie.
Even some of the shots. They recreated some of the shots and how they wiped his face. And,
But so that was kind of interesting, and it's something fun to look up after the movie. So they're done with their lecture. Carolyn comes out, pleads with them to come to her house and check out what's going on with her family. So they go, and as soon as they walk in the door, Lorraine, you can see her face just kind of drops as she's looking at the family. And she meets everyone. They tell them all this information. Everyone has moved their beds to the living room. Kind of like what we did this summer when it was too hot in my apartment.
Yeah, we got out of that bedroom and went straight into the living room. So much better.
Yeah, well, it was great. Not so much for them, though. So
yeah, different experience.
Different experience.
Yeah.
But so everyone looks like they haven't slept in like 2 weeks.
Same.
So we get more information. They talk about the clock stopping. They talk about the rancid smells, doors rattling and banging on the walls that all happen in 3 hits. And this is where Ed tells them, well, that's an insult to God. Because you got the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Trinity.
Holy shit.
The holy fucking Christ. And they walk through the house, they walk through the property. Lorraine sees a bunch of shit, like this woman hanging. She talks to the youngest girl who has the music box. She looks through the music box and she can see Rory. Little sad Rory. And eventually they tell Roger and Carolyn that their house is possessed, so they need to do an exorcism for their house. And they explain that it doesn't matter where you go, even if you move, it's going to follow you. So they have to collect proof to show the church.
The Vatican. They need
proof from the Vatican because they're not church-going people.
They need to send proof to the Vatican to get approval from them.
But usually they just, if they were like all baptized, they could send it to a certain priest. But because they're not baptized, they're like, I don't know.
They're not baptized.
They record their stories. When they get back to their house, they realize none of the recording worked for when Carolyn was speaking. Mm-hmm. You can hear Ed, you can hear Lorraine, you can't hear her. And at this point, Lorraine she's done her research because she has all of these documents. Amazing research, where they find out that the house was purchased in like 1848, and it was purchased by this husband and wife. The wife was related to one of the witches who was burned at the stake in Salem. The wife ended up going crazy, and after giving birth, after like 7 days, wasn't she like killing the baby in the fire?
Sacrificing
she was sacrificing the baby in their fireplace, ran outside, proclaimed her love to Satan, and hung herself on their tree.
At 3:07 on the dot.
And they have her death recorded at 3:07.
All the way back from 1848.
Over 100 years.
Over 100 years.
So they have all that information, and then this woman had cursed anyone who took her land, which is why all of this shit was happening. Mm-hmm. And her information is...
Bathsheba was actually the composer of this film, and she played the main villain of the film as well. I thought it was pretty cool.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay. So
what do you want from me?
I thought you know there was going to be more.
No.
Anyways, and then they also find out like all of these different deaths occurred in the surrounding area. So they go with their assistant back to the house and an officer. They get all of this evidence, all this footage with like they see one of the girls get dragged by her hair, and it's like it's very clear like showing of possession.
Something's going on here.
Paranormal activity. So they take it and they tell him, we're going to get us the priest. We'll be back.
God bless you.
Well, and during this part too, the mom, Carolyn, is taking a nap. And when she's taking a nap, Bathsheba, like you see her all of a sudden appear above Carolyn and vomit blood into her mouth.
She just goes, bleh.
She vomits blood into her mouth, and this is when we see Carolyn change, and it's clear that Bathsheba has taken over Carolyn's body.
Yeah. Very gross scene.
Really disgusting. Gross. I don't like the bodily fluid shit going into people's mouths.
I mean, like if she would have puked?
If pea soup would have been in there, if she would have just hocked a loogie, anything, I don't like to see it.
And don't forget, before that happened, Carolyn was showing
oh my god,
a picture of
she showed, so they have all these pictures, and she was like, oh, they just keep falling off the walls, and then Lorraine picks up one specific one. It is such a shitty photo. It makes me so mad because they actually have a scene, like a flashback memory of the family that they show. They were on the beach and they pulled over and they thought it would be a great picture moment. But the photo is just the family leaning kind of over the camera, and all you see is just blue skies.
Just blue.
And it looks so, it's so shitty because it doesn't look like it's from the 70s at all. They do a terrible job with photography in this movie.
You know, I agree.
Anyways, that was one of the moments that really takes you out of the movie.
There's that. There's also, and I'm sure it's already happened by now, but each of the Warrens have like a little
Their daughter
locket.
Gives them a locket, and she puts her picture in the locket that she gives to the mom. You can see the printer lines on there. Right. So someone clearly was in an office and be like, fuck, we need a picture of Judy. Quick, print one up.
Take a picture.
It's absolutely terrible. God damn it. It's so stupid. Well, it's just like come on.
Look at that budget. And
there's probably a filter that you can put over and just print, whatever. Doesn't matter. So anyway, so they go back to their house, they talk to a priest, and this is when you find out that, well, they have to get approval from the Vatican, and so they have to go through all these hoops, and as they're talking to the priest, the family has now gone to a motel because they think that's going to be safer. And Carolyn actually takes two of the girls out of the motel during the night, and she goes back to the house. Mm-hmm. And I think Roger calls Ed and Lorraine and just tells them, like, she's acting crazy. She didn't say anything. She just took the girls and left. So they all meet up back at the house, and we find them in the basement. Carolyn's trying to kill one of the daughters. She's being restrained by like the officer and her husband. And this is when we realize, well, although Ed is not approved to perform an exorcist, he is the only man that can do it, and he can step up.
I know you can do it, but I
God
can't.
brought
I'm
us
not supposed
together
to.
for a reason.
Yeah.
So this is when we have the big kind of spooky moments.
Which I feel like is just, it felt so scattered on like, everything that was happening.
I didn't mind it. There are certain parts about it that I didn't love, but I think there are also moments that I was into. I didn't think she needed contacts. I didn't think she needed to wear like yellow contacts. We were talking about her eyes. She
naturally.
has the Pennywise eye,
Yes.
the new Pennywise eyes, where they just kind of like go off a little bit in different directions. And when she smiles and she kind of glazes over her eyes,
there's just, and it's that actress herself. Like it's just the her aesthetic that she has, and it's just like naturally
it's just
creepy.
Kind of
and
creepy already.
She didn't need as much makeup as she had for that whole like transformation thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought like when she was pulled back downstairs at a certain point, when she was like flying into shit, I thought that looked like shit too, because she literally looked like she was being pulled by.
She looked like she was in a harness.
Yeah, she was in a harness, and they were just like, just throw her into shit. I don't care. And then you see her just kind of like, you could tell that she's wearing like a vest. She's bracing
herself too with her arms and legs. Instead of like, I feel like if you were actually being thrown around, it'd be just, almost like a
you can't control. Right.
Yeah. So there are moments like that weren't great, but
I didn't like.
I like when she bit the officer.
I thought that was cool. I mean, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, there's one point where they're trying to restrain her, and the officer's right by her, and she takes a chunk out of his cheek. Oh, I love, because it's just,
you felt it. You're like,
feel it. Yeah. Ugh.
What bothered me too were like the sounds that were coming from her. Some of them were fine, and you can tell that were like that her as an actress that was doing it.
Yeah.
Some of them were like very distorted.
They try and like dub over voices. They sound like alter them.
Some of them sounded like very video gamey, is what I put. And some legit sounded like Nazi zombies in Modern Warfare. Some of you will know this. It sounded just like that, and it bothered me because I was like, "Hey, I know that noise." There's so many zombie noises that they play. Eventually, you get used to like what they sound like, and that's what I swear like they use that for her.
She just sounded like a German.
Yes, but it brought me back to just like back to The Exorcist, just because we were just watching that, but they use actual voices rather than trying to alter the voice. And I get like we have the technology to do stuff like that and stuff, but if anything, I don't think that they did a very good job doing so.
I think that is an issue with a lot of scary movies now, where they just try and put too much. It's like they just overuse technology and effects that we have just because we have them. I don't think that they always add something positive to the movie.
No.
But yeah, so we have the exorcism happening, and then it gets to the point where she kind of gets out of these restraints that they have her in.
Oh, by the way, how did they get into the house? They take a shotgun and they shoot the door when you're just like, there could have been someone behind there.
Exactly. The Warrens and the officer come up on the house and the front door is locked, and the officer just like, get out of the way, and just shoots at the door handle, which I get, that's where you're supposed to shoot. Sure. That makes sense. But you don't really know if someone's
There's windows too.
There.
There's windows that you could have gone through.
I don't know. Or kick the door.
You kick the door. Well, they should have. I mean, I don't know if they were. I can't remember if they were how hard they were trying to open the door. But either way, you have two kids that are missing, and then your wife is in there somewhere too, and who knows what's going on. But you're using a gun and you're shooting into the house. Essentially, it's a shotgun too. But it's not going to just stop at the door.
Where it's like, even if you're ramming yourself against the door, you should always try to kick next to the door handle, because that's where it's going to break. And I didn't see anyone kick. But so now we're in the final stages where they're finishing up their exorcism, and Lorraine is kind of holding her head and like pleading with her and like, you have to fight through this. Remember that day at the beach? And which again, we're brought back to this shitty photo.
Shitty day, and they show like a video.
They show footage of them running in the sand.
Posing.
Which, whatever, fine. That wasn't so terrible, but the fucking photo.
Well, that, and then there wasn't any other memorable days that Carolyn had besides that beach session. That was the only thing that she was like, oh,
this is described as we were driving down the coast to our new house. So this was
so
maybe
recent.
a month or two ago. Maybe.
Not even.
And it's like, okay, so you guys pulled over and you took a picture. Like, that was all of an hour. And you have an entire family.
A whole family. You have 16 years of family. You
could have been
right
like,
there.
Any of the 5 Berts.
No.
Nah.
None of them. I was having fun once we got to the beach.
That's when things turned around.
That's when it was all...
Well, they were living in New Jersey, so what kind of memories are you going to make there?
I guess so. Sorry.
Joking, I've never been to New Jersey. I can't show
I'm sure we would love it.
Yeah.
The Nets used to be in New Jersey.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really care.
Okay.
Anyway, so now she's, actually vomits back up the blood that was vomited into her.
and then they do like the shot where she's like, it's supposed to be like she's okay. Like she's her normal self, but she like looks up.
If they would have just had that as her transition.
Yeah.
As like into this is when she's possessed, because she has all this makeup on, and then they fade away the makeup into this kind of partially normal face.
Yeah.
It looks like there's still transition that needs to happen, but if they would have just done that, it looks like she is almost made of wax, or like something's off. That is creepier than the color contacts and all of the liquid latex shit, like all of that.
It was annoying just because you saw that, and then they try to make it like a nice, like, oh, she's back.
And there's like light shining on her,
shining down.
Her little girl who she's just tried to murder.
Yeah, and he's like staring at her like...
Yeah, the little girl who saw her eat a part of a face.
Yeah, but she like looks up and she just like does like a smile, and then we were like, it's just she can still be possessed.
It looks like she's about to like stab either her kid or herself.
And then we cut to her being actually normal. And you're like, oh.
And they're walking out of the house, and all of her bruises and cuts and stuff like disappear as soon as she walks through the threshold, like to the outside. So this is where it kind of wraps up. Ed and Lorraine, they go back to their house and see their daughter, and they take the music box that the little girl had, and they put it in their kind of secret room. And, which is another thing that I spotted, they have an albino stuffed squirrel. I
want to know about that.
As one of the possessed, I would love to hear that backstory. And then it got me thinking too, what is the stupidest thing that could be possessed? I think I have my answer.
Binky.
A binky? Mine was a box of noodles.
It's a box of noodles. And it's like, it's in a normal
It's in like
setting.
a Bartoli.
Yeah. And someone's like about to cook, and they're like, hey, don't cook that.
Don't you cook that.
It's possessed.
They just, as soon as they're cooked, they just start wiggling up.
Yeah. You're like, oh yeah. And they just close the door. And then the movie also like ends with music box,
the mirror in it with the spiral starts like spinning, and the music is playing, and you're expecting something to pop out.
Which I think at this time, like this is 2006 or 2013, I think around this time, people are used to jump scares still, especially movies doing that.
And at the end too, I feel like a lot of movies do it like right then, and then it cuts to black. Right. But that didn't happen.
Right, exactly. And that's what I like really appreciated that. Because it like continues the suspense, or like continues some kind of suspense where you're like, oh, what is it? What is it? And then it ends and you're like, oh.
Well, and for me, I always want to like rewatch it or
exactly. You're like, did I miss something?
Like, okay, I want to make sure I covered all my bases.
I'm pretty sure there wasn't anything there. But yeah, I mean,
if it was, we missed it.
Yeah, and we suck.
And we have been for years.
Yes. So, I guess with that too, and then they show the photos at the end of the credits. So those were actual
show the real photos
occurrence.
Of real people.
Yep, with the parent family being attacked by some kind of entity. Both Lorraine and the parent family signed off on this movie.
The Warrens and the...
No. Ed died in 2006.
Oh.
Unfortunately. Yeah, so both Lorraine and the parent family signed off on the movie as they were the lead investigators of The Haunting. So they were like planning on doing this movie or these series of movies like in the mid-2000s. And it didn't happen until, obviously, 2013. But many of the events that happened to the parents were present in the movie, but there was never an exorcism that happened in the original case. Lorraine said that Ed would never have tried to perform an exorcism as he was not a priest. I appreciate her just being like, yeah, we wouldn't have done that.
I like her more now because she said that.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, we would have done so much more.
Or he would have done such an amazing job.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Like from what I've seen of like, I've watched a good amount. I know a good amount about Lorraine, I'd say. She definitely has a really cool personality. And that sounds like her, where she's just like, she'll tell you when something is what it is, and she'll tell you when it's like, that was bullshit. Which is cool. Apparently, Andrea Perrin, who I guess was one of the Perrin girls, reported seeing her mother possessed, specifically during a seance, and she remembered hearing her mother talk in a foreign language and levitate in her chair. And then Andrea herself felt thrown across the room not too long afterwards. And then
she felt herself thrown across the room.
That might have been my own doing. Yeah. And then the last kind of trivia that I have is, of course, there were odd happenings on the set.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, strange winds that don't affect the trees, phone calls dropping, animals reacting to nothing and that like people couldn't see on the set.
All three of those things happen almost every day in my life.
Exactly.
Honey barks at nothing.
I was hoping she was like actually looking at something. Yeah. But it's like, of course, it's like at this point, it's like, what scary movie or haunted movie doesn't have stuff like that?
Those are such weak,
I know,
scary sightings for a movie. It's like, no, you can't start saying like dogs bark at nothing. My dad's dog will she'll be sleeping and then look straight up into like the corner of a room and her eyes will just kind of dart
super
around.
freaky when she does that too. Oh
my
like, what
God,
is wrong
that
with
dog.
You?
Oh. I don't want to get into it.
That dog's a freak. Let's get into IMDb reviews.
Yes.
So, the average rating for this movie, what do you think the average rating is for our age range?
For our age range? Mm-hmm. I feel like it would be kind of high. I feel like it would be like around 7s.
I think you're right. About a 7.6, 7.5.
Ooh.
Male, female. So with that, the first review is, with virtually no sex, no gore, and no cursing, The Conjuring earns its R rating on scares alone.
It's rated R?
Apparently.
No, there's no way.
9 out of 10. Should I check?
Yeah.
They barely even swear. We brought that up too, like in the movie where they're reacting to things, and the way they react is more so like, whoa, not like, what the fuck is that? Holy shit! Like exactly how we would react.
I get freaked out when I don't hear you walk into a room and I start swearing.
I'm very silent. It's rated R.
That's insane.
It's really weird.
Well, that's stupid. How did it get that rating?
Scary.
Spooky. All
right. 9 out of 10. Who would have guessed that the director of Saw would end up being the most inventive horror filmmaker working in the industry? James Wan brilliantly takes us back into the retro days of horror, delivering an extremely stylistic, visually striking horror film that stands tall amongst the classics. I don't think it's
visually striking at all.
Stands tall amongst the classics.
Okay. No, it doesn't.
In short, The Conjuring is the most terrifying film I've ever seen.
Would you poop your pants?
Whoa. Trying to erase his name from the torture porn crowd has proved difficult for the director of Saw. However, without a doubt, he's finally done it.
I mean, that is actually an interesting point that he went from Saw that was literally just ripping people apart.
Or has turned more so
I shouldn't say it started out that way. It has turned into that.
Right.
To this, where there's not a ton of gore. There's not a ton of swear. I don't even know if there is any swearing. There's nothing to earn a rated R.
Yeah, well, I mean, you compare that to Insidious, too. Insidious is like one of the first movies that I really kind of remember where I'm like, there's not a lot of gore at all in this movie. It's just, it's more spooky. Mm-hmm. And I appreciated it. And I was like, okay. Like, it was like the light that we saw at the end of the tunnel during like the mid to late 2000s where everything was just like torture porn gore.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't care about this. It doesn't do anything
it's
anymore.
Not an interesting
There's nothing
story.
interesting
You're
about
just,
it. Right.
Yeah, you're just killing people.
But anyways, on looks alone, this movie should be a PG movie, which would normally be frowned upon by the horror junkies. But despite having no sex, no gore, and no swearing, James Wan's latest film has been slapped with an R rating anyway. If you're wondering how frightening it actually is, I think that MPAA has spoken on its behalf. Most horror films these days climax somewhere in the middle, and in turning everything that follows doesn't really have the same effect. In The Conjuring, there's comic relief brilliantly placed throughout to bring you down from your climax so that you get another chance to build up your fear and get startled again.
The only real comic relief, and I say that loosely, I would guess is between the assistant and the cop. And
that's what I thought too.
That was the part that we were talking about could have been taken out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was one thing that we were talking about where they're like, there's this weird there's this weird tension between them. Mm-hmm.
It's like this
tension that shouldn't have been there anyways. Like, you're like, I don't care that this person.
It's this fragile masculinity versus this kind of over intellect, and it just doesn't really seem like there should have been a battle there in the first place between them, like any real issue. But they really introduce it, and it just seems pointless. Because
did we talk about that? Where we
didn't get into it.
He basically while they were on one of the stakeouts, the cop was like, "Ugh, need more coffee. You want some?" And then the guy's like, "No, I'm good." And
no, I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, and then he takes it like, okay.
Yeah, he takes offense to the fact that the guy said, "No, I'm good, thanks." And I get the guy didn't look him directly in the eye and wasn't like, "You know what? No, thank you, though, man." I wasn't
taking it all. It's like,
yeah, it just sounds like two people talking who aren't best friends. They're just colleagues. Where it's like, You want some more coffee? No, I'm good.
Okay. And then he gets up and and now that I remember when we watched that, I was like, what was that?
Well, up until it seems like a very normal interaction. I'm like, yeah, and then the whole well, you just offended me. It just seems so stupid.
Yeah.
And pointless, and it's not funny. I don't like.
I didn't laugh at anything in this movie.
I don't.
I didn't think the movie, and it didn't have to be funny. That's fine. I didn't laugh at it though. I don't see them as comic reliefs. Okay. While obviously taking notes from The Exorcist and the Amityville Horror, the inspiration for this film derives from real case files from the Warrens, which is still their most famous case to date. Straying away from the iconic style made famous by The Cabin in the Woods, nothing on the surface of the story seems inventive. But I assure you that in the way that this film works, makes it one of the most creative films in recent memory.
I'm really curious to see what they have to say.
One thing I've always loved about James Wan is how he manages to take something so unoriginal.
James Wan wrote this.
Like the haunted house possession story in this case, and show it to us like we've never seen it before. The scares, pacing, sound design, camera work can only be described as precise.
No.
Together, James Wan and cinematographer John Lanetti, responsible for the look of Insidious as well, give us a fresh visual style that, unlike most horror films, include a lot of wide shots and movement.
They're just talking about the camera flipping.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh my god!" The cinematography is absolutely stunning, and nothing relying on shaky cam for its realism leaves a rather unique feel to the movie, separating it visually from any other movie you can narratively relate this to.
I will say I'm kind of over the whole shaky camera thing.
Yeah.
I think it's overused, but I don't think that because they don't use shaky camera, this should be a selling point. I don't think that's a real triumph for them.
Triumph. Ultimately, the overall production value allows The Conjuring to stand out in an otherwise rotting genre. The acting is impressive. The practical effects are perfect.
Oh.
I hate when people use that when they're like, "Oh, it's perfect." It's perfect? No, nothing is. And the classic 70s feel one was going for makes for a great time at the movies. I do think there was a 70s feel to it. I don't know if it was completely consistent.
It wasn't consistent, but there are definitely moments in the camera work, I think, that you could feel it.
Yeah. Review number 2.
Okay.
Yawn. 2 out of 10.
Oh.
How many times can they hash out the same old tripe? I struggle to class this as a spoiler, as if I've ever seen a film where a family moved into a detached old house with a cobweb-filled attic cellar where the dog won't come out and someone first catches a glimpse in the mirror. The father tries to rationalize when all his family are screaming monster in the cupboard, wardrobe, cellar, attic, under the bed, yada, yada, yada.
I don't feel like that. Well, I mean, he has a lot to say, but I don't feel like the father tried to rationalize.
No, I don't think so either.
I think the only thing I can think of is when she got the bruises and the guy was like, hey, will you go to a doctor?
Well, this is another one of those films. Nothing to see here. Move along. The only credit I can give to this unimaginative template of a horror film, just change character names and some dialogue, and bingo, a new Hollywood horror film right out of the scripts of the 70s. Anyway, the credit a sterling, if a bit stereotypical, of the girl who sees the monster as her imaginary friend. Yes, it has that old chestnut too.
He's talking about the little girl who saw Rory, but Rory wasn't a monster. Rory was just... I think because there are a few ghost characters in the movie, but besides the main evil witch, they weren't threatening. They're creepy, but they didn't threaten anyone.
No. Performance from Mackenzie Foy, the little girl who seems to have 20 years acting experience over that of Ron Livingston, who's about as wooden as an oak tree's morning glory. Don't get me wrong, I like Mackenzie Foy, but it's Ron Livingston. Wow. That was it. That was how it ends.
That's how it ends?
Yes, that's how it ends.
Wow.
What a review.
They really hated it.
Review number 3. Paranormal Supers and the Vatican-approved exorcisms, 1 out of 10. Yep, this is the Conjuring, all right. And unless you're a gullible Catholic-minded wienerhead, oops, sorry, then don't ever believe in this film's pious propaganda and allow it to con you into thinking that its story was anything else but a barefaced pack of lies.
I mean, I guess I don't really feel that betrayed by the fact that it's like based on... Because there are a ton of movies in a ton of different genres that will say, based on a true story. And it's like, there may have been one person that lived in the town with that same name.
Yeah.
That's how it's based.
Right. And then they have a lot of asides in this, too. So I'll try to say it in a way that shows it. Because that's all it was. Based on a true story. Spare me. And if you view holy sanctimony in a similar way as I do, The Conjuring will surely leave you more than just a little tiffed by its completely demented, over-the-top exorcism rubbish, as well as its totally insulting, self-righteous religious overtones. This film's final mini-sermon on religious faith was truly despicable beyond words.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. When it came to his scare tactics, from one utterly predictable thud and creak sequence to the next, ho-hum. The Conjuring story wholeheartedly gave complete license over those of the Catholic faith and permitted these sainty ones to claim hauntings as being their territory and their territory alone. Yeah, so like lay off, you effing heathens. Jesus. In The Conjuring story, Ed and Lorraine are two real good paranormal supers who faithfully get down to yet another performance of a Vatican-approved exorcism, and together this dynamic duo work like the devil to get rid of the plagued parent home of its diabolically demonic possession. If you ask me, I thought that supers, Ed and Lorraine, were about as hilariously insincere and unconvincing as you could possibly imagine. I
didn't love their acting, so... I mean, I didn't hate it as much as this person did.
Yeah. I was going to say, Ed in this movie, like, the accent, I appreciate that he, like tried the accent, but it's like, yeah, he went way too far into it.
Yeah.
And it was annoying. And then Lorraine, you talked about, like, how she dressed and stuff was annoying, but I think some of her, like, asides are just really annoying, too, like, kind of dramatic. And it was a little much. Like, I really wonder how much money these two charlatans, for good God, charge for their services as freaking Ghostbusters. You certainly can't expect me to believe for a minute that they actually offered their supernatural assistance out of their sheer kindness of their Catholic hearts, and that they received no monetary gain out of it. And besides all of that, I certainly thought that this was too convenient that the Warrens just happened to live but a hop, skip, and a jump away from the parents. Which I did bring that up, I wasn't sure about the distance either, because it did kind of seem that way too. They're just like, oh, we're not that far. It really killed me when paranormal super Lorraine fell through the false wall on the second floor of the parent house, and from there she went crash banging down about 30 feet to the basement's hard concrete floor without sustaining any real injuries.
Yeah, she only has like a scratch on her head.
That's very true.
But you pointed that out.
She would be like torn up. There's nails that are going into that wall. Yeah. There's nails going into that wall. Like she would be a wreck.
Yeah.
And like you said, like 30 feet. And I get like, yeah, you're bracing.
She's falling down 2 stories.
2 stories, you're bracing against the walls. But like I said, there's shit in those walls. There's nails all over those walls.
Well, and you're falling through wood too. So if that splinters off, there's a good chance you're ripping your fucking face up, not a little tiny scratch.
Now you know why I call her an Ed Supers. All in all, The Conjuring was an ultimate mess of exorcism movie cliches that sucked to heaven and hell and beyond. And after you see the utter nonsense that this film expects one to swallow and accept at face value, I guarantee it'll make a true disbeliever out of you, as it did me.
Oh my God.
P.S. I thought that this film's opening sequence with the ugly Annabelle doll to be one of the most absolutely underhanded bits of sucker bait ever
Jesus Christ.
foisted on a movie audience ever. I mean, I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah,
too,
there are some points that this person's hitting that I agree with. Again, my passion doesn't boil to the level that theirs does.
And I think there definitely was a theme of, religion and faith within this movie as well. And that's whatever.
Yeah, it is what it is for me. I don't really give a shit.
Not enough to write a strongly worded review.
I don't hate religion as much as this person does.
But that's it.
Damn.
That is the third review, which means we're going into final reviews.
Yeah.
So, Jessica, what is your final review of The Conjuring?
It does have rewatchability for me. I do like a majority of the acting. Some acting is really off for me. I don't think the scares are there. I would say this one is probably like a 4.9 for me.
4.9?
Yeah.
Okay. I was surprised because I heard we were talking about it prior.
Yeah, we were talking about it prior and I scored it higher than what I just said. But after talking through it and all of the issues that we have, I can't score it that high.
Yeah. So with that as well, my review, my number is a 5.3. I thought overall the movie it's a fair movie. It's fine. I wouldn't say it's the best movie ever, some of the reviews that we read. There are a lot of inconsistencies with the movie. There are things that I like about the movie, but there's a lot of things too that are they're so annoying. And like you said, they could have just done it, but they didn't. And they chose not to. And I think that's a big portion is they chose not to. The story too is it's typical. If you think about it as a whole, you're like, oh, well, that's what it is.
In the story.
There's little things within the movie that you're like, oh, that's different. Like the whole clapping thing obviously stands out, but it's just
yeah.
What else? Yeah, well, and they do take elements from other movies, and I get that too. But I also while doing some of the trivia too, you look at some of the things that it's. I think it also shows the based on true events kind of thing where they're just there's some things in there that were from that, but we had to make something out of it,
Yeah, for me, that's never really bothered me. I learned from an early age that when they say based on a true story, no, fuck you.
Bullshit. I think some of the performances were good. Some were not. I think it's a fair movie. And there's rewatchability as well. And I think that's why I gave it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it. That's it for The Conjuring.
Yeah.
So with that, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Make sure to follow us on our social pages. We have Facebook page now. We have an Instagram page up now. Got a Twitter page up now. I don't really look at the Twitter page as much, but come and say hi.
Recommend some movies for us too.
Please recommend some movies for us to put on the Spooky Spinner. And I don't know how many movies we have currently on there. I haven't seen a lot.
We have a ton.
We got a lot, but
But we're always looking for recommendations.
Yeah, exactly. Please say something.
Anyone,
please, are you out there? But once again, thank you so much for listening. And Jessica, sign us off.
Hey, goodbye.
Blow the man down, and pray pay attention and listen to me. Give me some time to blow the man down. I'm a deep water sailor just in from Hong Kong. Give me way, blow the man down.